You got it.
Hello, everyone. So today I'm speaking with Danielle, and it's a really nice segue to Jeff's last conversation with Jesse. So Danielle is Jesse's partner, and they live in Toronto. Jeff and I have just been starting to develop a relationship with them more and more as time goes by, as Danielle and I have both become mothers. I remember meeting Jesse for the first time, and you had just birthed Phoenix. I believe he was 3 months old or something at that time, close
Yeah.
to that. And yeah, it's just really incredible for Jeff and I to connect with couples that resonate, that inspire us, that bring new openness and new perspective. It's really, really nice. And that live in Ontario. It's like an extra bonus. And yeah, we had met them through David Avocado Wolf. And I sat out on the last podcast. I honestly just really needed a sauna. And I was quite exhausted that day. So Jeff took that podcast solo, and then it kind of presented this opportunity for Danielle and I to connect without Jeff. And I'm very excited for that. So we love starting. You're probably very new to all of the people who listen to our podcast. So if you want to introduce yourself, introduce your work, what lights you up, maybe, anything about your family, wherever you want to go.
Yeah. Okay, well, like you said, my name is Danielle. My partner is Jesse, who had a nice conversation with Jess about Float Toronto. So I've been associated with Float since basically they opened up 10 years ago. But my profession is that I'm a licensed practitioner in traditional Chinese medicine. And it's been quite a journey to get to because I've always had an interest in health, and I started off as a yoga practitioner and very dedicated, and still have a dedicated practice. It's been my personal outlet for spiritual and mental well-being, as well as physical. But the Chinese medicine had such a great complement towards my understanding of how to see the world and how to see health from a Eastern perspective while continuing to study freely on the Western perspective of health for both women and men. But, today is a great conversation to talk specifically for women because it's a completely different biochemistry that we have to operate with. And going through birth, as we've talked about, and I just had my second baby who is now 6 months, and having, a whole other view of how the body changes and grows and, adapts into a new form is an interesting thing for a woman. And as a man, they have different, perspectives and challenges for their own physical bodies. And then for us, it's like really opening, and we have like a whole other way of just corresponding to the world. So it's going to be a fun way to kind of just riff off each other as we've learned through our personal journeys through health and personal experiences to like see what comes up through, our journeys.
Mhm. So when you speak about the body changing, or the female physiology changing into womanhood, really, or mother when we give birth, what were some of the big pieces for you? Whether that's
Yeah.
like a physical change in your body, or emotional, mental, or ways of being that you, yeah, in some ways, I guess, let go of the maiden and entered mother.
Great. Yeah, and this is really personal for each woman that goes through that journey of birth because it's both the spiritual, the mental, and physical change. So if we just look at the physical, your body literally grows and it becomes a different shift. Your hips like shift placements, organs are shifting. The whole body literally physically shifts into a new form. And then when you release the baby, you have a new form to really work back together. And you have a little more sensitivity towards understanding how everything was placed because now you're putting your body back together. If you're attuned to understanding how to feel that connection. So it's beautiful to, on a physical level, to be like, oh, I have a chance to just remodel myself on a physical form. And then when it comes to the spirit and the mental emotional, it's like a portal that you go into. You genuinely, and it depends, every woman is different, right? But like for my birth, I had a home birth. I didn't have any interventions. And so it was a very psychedelic experience. Like I had gone through waves for myself. It was waves of sensations that kind of gave me this feeling like I was like somewhere in an ocean, and then I was having visuals and like colors, and then all of a sudden like the intensity of the labor was going up, and then my body had moments where it's like, how much do I trust? How much do I let go? And when you
Mhm.
spiritually allow yourself to give in and you surrender, it becomes a portal that you just entered. And I remember after birth, I walked out into the world like, I don't know, a couple days later, and I was just like, nobody knows the transformation just happened to me. I'm a whole different person, you know? Like
Mhm.
spiritually and mentally, I just felt like I was walked through a whole other world. And now I have adopted this new superpower that I can't even explain.
Did you feel that more with the your first baby than your second?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, I was curious about that. Yeah.
Yeah, like with when I had gave birth to Tatum, Tatum was she because my birth with Phoenix, my little boy, was a 24-hour birth, you know, and so you're going through all of these, whoa, and it's so new. So as you know, you're like, I don't know what to expect. Then you have a transition point where you're like, I don't know if I can do this, you know, and it's a very real point. So you have to find that deep strength within yourself to like, do I want to continue going? How much do I trust? How much do I feel that this is part of my path to go fully into that portal? Do I need intervention? And it's okay if you do. It's just more about your personal journey about how much can I read the situation.
Mhm.
But then with Tatum, she came so fast. She was like, we talked about this. I free birthed her because she came so fast. I was like, whoop, she slipped right out. And it
Yeah.
was a glorious feeling. And it was more about this sensation of like, oh my goodness, like I've been here before, but it's a new feeling of enjoyment and
Mhm.
personal like accomplishment because I've already had an experience of it, but this one was nothing like that. And I loved that it was just completely beautiful on its own accord. And I got to experience it without having to feel like I have to be somewhat like what I did last time, you know? Like I gave myself that feeling of if I have to go anywhere, for instance, I had a home birth, if I had to go to the hospital, I have to go. But because I allowed myself to feel relaxed, it became
Mhm.
so much easier to just birth.
Mhm. Yeah, I hold so many questions about that because my first labor was also very long, about 30 hours. And so just a bit longer than yours. And I remember transition, and it was very much right at the end of like a very long labor. And I remember the feeling or telling myself, oh, this is what birth feels like,
Mhm.
and being kind of shocked at the sensations in my pelvis. And maybe this is too much information, but in my like my butt, my anus. And I was like, wow, you can read all the stories, watch all the videos, but until you feel it, I there's now a trust in my body with associated with those sensations. So I'm so curious with the next baby if I'll just be meeting an old friend again, hello. And I won't be, honestly, I won't be as confused of what the process feels like in my body because, like I said, read all the books or watch all the videos, but you don't know what it feels like till you feel it.
And that's, you know, what they say about what wisdom is. It's like
Mhm.
knowledge and experience. Like we can
Mhm.
study about it, we can look at all the videos and read, but until you have the experience, you won't be able to
Mhm.
fully understand the wisdom of life. So we have to
Mhm.
walk through the fire to get an understanding of like what it is that our health is involves, you know? Like I have to like change things in my life so that I can experience something to make sure
Mhm.
that I understand something. Like we'll
Mhm.
talk about even just eating. Like I was a vegan for 12 years and I had to go into walking into that to
Yeah.
understand what health was. Because after going into that, and I was like, you know, I don't want to identify myself as like a specific thing. So I
Mhm.
started to read on carnivore. I started to read about the whole other side of the spectrum, and I was like, well, I got to try it. So I went straight to carnivore. Like I cut plants altogether and went like straight to carnivore, just
Yeah.
meat and eggs and organ meats. And I was like, wow, what a shift. And it was to
Mhm.
break that whole ideologies that you get trapped into sometimes. And it's very important
Mhm.
to keep yourself aware because information is constantly changing,
Mhm.
as we as a human grows, our body shifts differently. So it worked for me at one point, but now I have to shift and look at another angle of the whole picture so that I can get a bigger picture of what is the best at the time of my life, that
Mhm.
I need these nutrients of just everything, not just food, but like spiritual nutrients and like, relationship that's nourishing, because you start to realize even friendships and like even family members where your boundaries kind of lie because you change and your perspective of the world changes, but you still care.
Mhm.
However, you just want to make sure that I'm listening to my true self and not getting just veered off to somebody else's personal strong, viewpoints.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm curious. I feel like a lot of women, it'll be mostly women, I think, who listen to this episode. And I'm curious if you want to speak to the nourishment part. Maybe you can compare it to being vegan. I laughed because I also had a vegan stage, and my body, it did not work with my physiology, and that's okay. It brought me so much knowledge and experience, and it was also pretty rough for me, like hormonally, inflammation wise. uh, I had like pretty severe constipation, which I was dealing with hemorrhoids. Again, not sexy, but I share it because I actually feel like a lot of people do experience that and nobody wants to talk about it because it's hard, and it was also very embarrassing for me. And I had some incredible healing with the carnivore diet, and so I laughed again. It was a big part of my shift, and I would say healing at a cellular level. It was very physiological at that point. And then after that, yeah, I mean, I'm not as strict. I still love my staples and routines with food, but being able to know what fully nourishes me, being pregnant and as a mother is so key, I think, to create safety in the body and beyond just like nourishment wise with food. It's like safety emotionally. You can regulate yourself, your blood sugar's not spiking and dropping throughout the day. And then if you're more regulated mentally, emotionally, then our children become more mentally, emotionally regulated because they're feeding off of us. And yeah, so I'm curious if you want to speak to what it means for you to be nourished. Maybe we can start with food and then going into, I think a lot of women who become mothers experience this like, wow, identity shift. And then how do you not get lost? You kind of spoke to it as like these spiritual nourishment, or maybe time for yourself. So how do you nourish yourself as Danielle's soul, as this individual human that's separate from mother in some ways? Of course, they're always connected.
Yeah, but you make a good point, right? Because we're still ourselves. But once we become a mother, it really is like, all encompassing. So we really
Mhm.
do want to give our all naturally. But you'd also want to be able to hold on to the things that make you personally happy.
Mhm.
So we'll go back to the food part and then I'll lead into, the whole question. But with my how I got into health is because in my early 20s, actually started like maybe late teens, like 17, 18, I started to get into vegetarianism and then went to straight vegans in my 20s because I was always having digestive issues, and like my menstruation was always cramping and like I had so much like physical ailment that wasn't like life threatening, but just uncomfortable, like the inflammation. And I was like, oh man. But I was also eating a very standard, well, you can call it American, but I call it Portuguese because that's my upbringing. A standard Portuguese diet, It's just kind of like unconscious meat consumption, like hormone fed, and just like non-organic produce. And like those make a difference. That is just a huge shift. You're like getting rid of all of the pesticides and herbicides, which are toxic loads in the body. So like even with veganism, like you want to make sure you're eating consciously because there's so much toxicity in plants. And so like one of the things when I started getting to veganism is that like, oh, it shifted my awareness to being more conscious in eating so that I actually felt good being a vegan for a while because, oh, I consciously ate now. I paid attention to organics and I paid attention to my food consumption. Great. So next was, well, I still don't feel the best. Like I was so foggy and
Mhm.
emotional because my hormones were always fluctuating, and everybody likes to just blame women. Oh, you guys are just, which we do. We have hormones that really do shift and alter our emotions, but
Mhm.
they're also very manageable if you
Mhm.
understand how it works. So if you're not eating properly and having more like, nutrient dense foods that provide you with all of your multivitamins and minerals without taking 1,000 pills, like you will feel balance, and having the awareness of a mindful practice to see the shifts in your own body before the reaction comes. So, like, as I was doing my veganism, I was also really dedicated to yoga and meditation. So, I was doing vipassanas, going a couple of times a year just to be like, I need to figure this all out. And then my yoga practice is my root. It really connects me to my body, mind, and spirit. So that always was an identity for myself to be like, this is where I feel best. And if I can continue to have my practice for me, because that's where I feel whole, then that's going to be my forever thing for me. I will always go back to my yoga. Like I'll work out with weights, I'll work out with different things and like hit classes, but like I always come back to the one thing that leaves me full and satisfied, and that's that. So
Mhm.
once I started realizing that veganism wasn't really clicking anymore, and I was in Chinese medicine school, and that was a very intense program, and I needed my brain to work much sharper. I started, and I've always been reading up and being interested in health and nutrition, and carnivore just came around, and Paul Saladino's book came out, and everybody started talking about it, and I was like, well, I like to read about food. I'm going to read about carnivore. I'm not like a trapped individual with an ideology. So I read first before I even like started. And
Mhm.
then I started to be like, okay, I can do this. So when I started to eat meat again, I was, Jesse remembers it. He's just like, you looked unhappy. He's like, you're just very upset when I was eating steak. And I was just like, I just can't tell if I like it, because my mind was battling with what my body was feeling, because I started to
Mhm.
feel so good. Like I felt my eyes lit up, my brain lit up, my body felt nourished and satisfied. I didn't have cravings anymore. And so I was like, wow, like I feel so good. But when I was eating, I was like, but my mind kept saying that I was vegan. And it was like a silly battle. And I was like, okay, I got to work on my mind again. So I have to like, we enslave ourselves sometimes for these things that we set up in our life. Like, I've always done this, and now I'm always going to be that. But it's not true. You reinvent yourself. You do it and you change, and you really connect to like being a true individual that's learning about the facets of life. So I started eating meat, and it was incredible. Nourish
Mhm.
myself. My hormones started to balance. We started talking about that, and it's like I started to really understand, like, okay, once I started knowing that plants had toxicity too, like even now, I started to read, there's a really good book on it called Toxic Superfoods by Sally Norton. She talks about oxalates in foods. She had a journey where she was plant-based, started to realize all of the issues that she was having was related to oxalates in plants, which are little crystals that create inflammation, and it creates a wide variety of inflammation. Gout, she had vaginitis, and so you start to realize all of these things connect with each other, and you're like, okay, so if I want to eat plants, I'm more conscious now about how I want to eat them, which ones are lower in toxicity, and like, keeping my balance of like awareness and just personal enjoyment. So
Mhm.
I think it's very important that women and people generally take a slight interest in knowing what's the conversation out there, and learning how to pick better choices for themselves that works with their anatomy and their physical body, because it's just like, oh right, like some people really like bread and can handle it. Awesome. But if you're starting to have digestive issues, but sourdough is better for you than regular bread, go sourdough. It's simple as that. Like it's
Mhm.
all about reading yourself and being honest, and then you balance out that whole ratio of what you personally enjoy, because it makes you happy. And so if it makes you happy, you have to be like, okay, if this makes me happy, everything's in that balance. So
Mhm.
so that kind of works out. And then the second part of the question was about the birth, and how, even just the postpartum of our body changes, because like even that will change the hormones the way that they fluctuate. And so when we get into our postpartum body, you might even realize certain things you liked before doesn't actually apply anymore now. I don't know if
Mhm.
you've had an experience about that, but like it's a big shift. Like, love my coffee. Now coffee's a little less in my life, although I still enjoy it, but it's not the same hit, And I'm like, oh, great. Same with chocolate. Still love chocolate. And I was just like, it doesn't hit the same. And it's like, fine, but it's just realizing, oh, I shifted, I changed, so I'm going along with the new changes.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Oh, there's so much I can go from that. But the one piece I remember when I switched to carnivore, I will never forget it. I started eating lamb again. And I was so happy. Like it was a high because like my body just, there was something missing and the lamb just filled these pathways. And I would get almost high after eating lamb. And I remember telling Jeff that I was like, Jeff, like lamb makes me really happy. And it faded once I think did a lot of the healing. That sensation faded, but I will never forget that. And it was those cues from my body that made me realize, oh, this is a good path to continue walking. This is a good journey to explore and see where it is. Because a lot of people do ask, with my healing with carnivore, they say, oh, are you still carnivore? And I said it worked for me for one moment in time, but I don't, in the summer, I have no desire to be carnivore at all. Now that like my gut's healed, we still eat a lot of like animal-based foods, but I love indulging in all the fresh produce. And we take that in because in the winter, frankly, in Northern Ontario, we don't have access to a lot. Even the organic produce in the grocery store does not taste good, um, in our perspective. So we don't eat a lot of it, even the organic stuff. So we generally just naturally go to animal based in the winter because of what's available. But it's interesting. A big thread from you is you have to listen to yourself, and there's no, okay, maybe this worked for us, but like that might not work for you. And your
Right.
diet really, like nourishment for me, even pregnancy and postpartum, I remember telling Jeff, I was like, I need more carbs actually than than ever. And being full carnivore during my pregnancy actually didn't feel that good. And I needed some carbs, and postpartum breastfeeding, I was, I loved carbs. It was great. I mean, it was still balanced, so I didn't get the blood sugar spikes and stuff like that. But I realized, oh, my body actually needs that fuel. It's like feeding a tiny fire because I am a pretty constant fire right now. So it was really fascinating once the healing happens and you can trust your body and your cues, then you can start eating intuitively. Where when I was dysregulated, I could have had the idea of, oh, I want to eat intuitively, but it's very, very hard when your cues for your body are crazy. Because I remember like craving nut butters so much. I would eat so much because at one point my body cracked and I was like, I just got to do the almond butter. And it really didn't feel good, but
Yeah.
like it's hard to eat intuitively and nourish yourself when the signals are kind of whacked.
I fully agree with you. Like, in like, it's the same. It's like funny enough, the nut butter thing though. Like, also that. So I was like,
Yeah.
yo, jars of nut butter and me was just a constant.
Oh, yeah.
And like there's that sensation. It's like I thought that, if I was cutting carbs, that was the carb for me, because it was a sweet sensation, but it was
Mm-hmm.
also packed with fat and like
Mm-hmm.
and protein. So I was like, oh, it's
Mm-hmm.
good for me, but like no, it's still very dampening and still very heavy in the body. It's not like it's good for you, but you'll justify it because you're lacking something. So,
Right. Mm-hmm.
as you said, like you need the carbs and then the craving stopped.
Yeah. So with TCM, I've never really deep dived in TCM. I know kind of the overarching principles, but
Yeah.
have you, like with the dampening and the different the elements, did you notice any like changes for you from becoming a mother?
Oh yeah, but not even just becoming a mother. Like
Yeah.
once I started to like study TCM and like the philosophy of how the organ systems, the Zongfu work. And so Zongfu is just the organ systems, this is the yin and yang organ systems. And there's a 5 element system for it. That's like the overall arch. It's like, we have fire, we have water, we have air, we have metal, and then, we also have wood. So like we have all of these like an earth, sorry, earth, air and metal is the same thing. But we have all these elements that kind of like work off each other based on the way we see the world. And so that's cool. And like I was like, oh, this is very interesting. So once I started to learn it, I was applying it to everything I saw around me. So it wasn't just my own physical body, but it was how interactions worked. It was how relationships and like, your day to day and how the society works on an economic level. Like everything can be broken down into these elemental relationships. So it was really cool. But on a physical level, I started to see, like, wow, like I'm having a lot of heat in the body and it's like rising to my head. And now I'm starting to have all of these different emotional struggles because I have so much heat that it's creating agitation, And so how do I release this heat from my body? Or we talked about eating those nut butters. That's dampness, that's heaviness. I have
Mm-hmm.
lethargicness and like I am able to have like a slow thinking. And it's because I'm having all this excess damp that's creating this heavy feeling in my body. So I need to like switch that up so that I'm able to regulate my waters better. And your waters is just like, your simple flowing of blood and chi and able to like connect your, circulatory system so that you're able to have like an actual balance without clogs. It's like a river. So if your river is smooth, then you're able to have fresh water just constantly flowing through that's creating a lot of nutrients and providing life to the land. But if you have a block and it's causing a sludginess that's now a swamp, and so that the swamp doesn't really have much life to it because it's becoming, overwatered, and now you don't even have like a healthy ecosystem working in that area. So it's very similar to the way the body works, right? So if you don't have an area that's providing with adequate nutrients of chi and blood, then you're having these swamp zones that create an unhealthy imbalance in the body. And that's why it's really important to continue to keep yourself in check physically and mentally about like where you are in the ways of like, do I feel balanced? Do I feel good? Am I wringing out the body? Like that's why I really appreciate yoga, is because it started to wring out areas. You twist, you move the lymphatic system so that you're able to like get the whole body to release toxins, because we are always picking up different toxins. It's just a life that we live. That's how this world has now been designed, It's like you're really trying to find a way to get rid of everything. It's like your what is it? Like floss has like forever chemicals in them. You're like, great, I can't like what floss do I need now? So I'm learning all these new things. I was like, man, like I have to find different floss, So you're always learning about where these things are hiding, and then you're trying to adjust. And so, you don't want to be obsessed about it, but yeah, it's kind of fun for me to know, like, how can I better my life and my choices?
Yeah.
Um, but we actually talked about how to find yourself back after postpartum. That was the other part of the question, because as I was talking about my yoga, that's how you have to take that 1 hour for yourself to
Mm-hmm.
not identify as the mother, but you get into being who I am, like my soul,
Mm-hmm.
my fullness. And that would be for me, my yoga. And somebody that I've met recently, a mother who just had her baby girl, and that baby girl's like, just a year old. She's a singer, like an opera singer. And so she realized to get back to herself, she needed to start singing again. So then she started to do just a random audition, just to give herself that feeling of nourishment. So whatever that feeling that gives you the wholeness, take that moment for yourself, because then you come back to being a mother so much stronger. You feel like you
Mm-hmm.
missed motherhood because you took that 1 hour, And I'm like, oh my God, I miss my babies because I was like away for an hour.
It's so incredible and hilarious at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, so is that, I'm trying to think, of a new mom maybe listening to this episode. So would they, when I'm thinking they would maybe ask you like practically, so does that look like a morning practice for you? Does that look like, you have someone every day so you can create that structure of like being with yourself, your soul, your spiritual nourishment every day? Yeah, is morning the time that you take that? How does that look like maybe on a more day-to-day or like practical?
Yeah. I mean, let's be practical. After Phoenix, one baby, I was
Yeah.
like, I could do it every day. I like, you know, at least 4 to 6 times a week, you know, like if it wasn't like every day, it was like really a lot. And so I was like, yeah, I could get it in. And because Jesse was able to like give me an hour. And I personally enjoy doing it in like midday, you know? So I was like, oh, midday is a good time. I really enjoy kind of like doing that. Baby number two, much less time. So like I'm like, oh, if I can get it in once or twice a week, I'd feel good, you know?
Yeah.
And that's okay to be at this point in my life. I have a 2-year-old and I have a 6-month-old. And I'm just like, okay, I can't do it as often as I'd like, but I know that I can find the time. And when I do it, I really savor it. And then I
Mhm.
take that moment of fill, like I just filled my cup and I bring it back to my family. And I just, it's like I'm a whole new person. I'm like, guys, I'm ready for this. I'm gonna make banana bread. I'm gonna like, just like go to the park with you right now. It's just like I feel
Um,
so good. And so be realistic, you know, like if it doesn't happen every day, it's okay. But
mhm.
remind yourself that's the thing you want to get back to. So
Mhm.
figure out a way to schedule that back. And then you
Mhm.
could be like, I got my fill for the week at least, you know? And so also like I have an access to floating, and I thought floating was very helpful for that. And it's great. It feels me nourished, but
Mhm.
nothing nourishes me more than having my yoga practice.
Amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. And yeah, it's so funny that you say that because that was the one of the threads that kept showing up for me postpartum, specifically before my bleed, which for me is like, oh, here's your new, it's like your invitation to grow when you're menstruating. And I kept having that same theme where it was, I just need a little bit of time for myself every day because I actually like I really love being a mother. I love the process and the journey. And yet those like moments, an hour of just being able to be fully in my body, fully in my breath. Um, yeah, it was just a replenishment that allows me to return, with like, okay, hi, baby, I've been gone for an hour and I'm even more present with my family than if you don't, for me anyways, if like I didn't take that, it would build up a stagnation, like a soul stagnation where I was, okay, now I'm confused about who I am. I feel disconnected to my sense of place or even actually really my body because I can try and, I can be present in my body with my partner, my dog, my child, but it's very different than when I can just like really enter the cave of my body and really go in. It's just more detailed and more subtle than when I have these outward distractions, even if I can find those pockets in the day where I can, check in and tune in with myself. It's very different than just like a full hour just with myself. Hmm.
Fully. And like, you know, and everybody's
Yeah.
on their different journeys of healing, you know, and understanding themselves, right? So
Mhm.
like if there are mothers out there that's like still learning how to be in their bodies and still learning how to work with their emotions in the ways of like, well, I just can't tell. I can't tell what makes me happy, or I can't tell what my body's really saying. Like I just don't have that. And it's about really taking the time to just be okay with that and saying, well, you know what? Why don't I just give myself a moment to just go for a little walk, even if it's a
Mhm.
15-minute walk alone, just
Mhm.
to listen to my mind run through thoughts. And you don't stop them, just let it run out like a wild horse, because eventually
Mhm.
you start to realize that you're watching your thoughts behind you. And you're like, oh, so there's more than just the thinking mind. There's the other mind behind you that's literally watching the whole thing play out. And that's where you stop to realize, oh, I don't have to react because
Mhm.
it's the front mind that's running around that you're maybe don't feel like your emotions are regulated because you're always reacting really quick, right? And you haven't had that time to just like take a minute to step back and watch. You're like, oh wait, that's not the thought I really want to say. So before you react on that thought, you have a breath to say, I could take a second to be silent and just
Mhm.
witness my body. Now, how does it feel? My body feels tight. My body feels sweaty. My body feels hot. And so you actually take the mind away from reacting from the thought to putting it in the physical body to feel the sensations. And now you just made the mind body connection. So you
Mhm.
work on building the mind body connection so that you lessen the reaction and you're more in tune with the body, and then everything starts to really unfold. Oh, now I realize this food doesn't work for my body because I can feel the reaction. Before I couldn't. But now
Mhm.
I started to realize I can like see my emotions flare up before I react on them. So I can hold my tongue back because that's
Mhm.
not really what I want to say. So
Yeah.
it becomes that shift once we start to like give ourselves a moment to see the mind and body react
Mhm.
before we have a chance to allow the reaction to unfold. So
Mhm.
that's a very important step for anybody who's creating this like mind body connection. It's like find a moment, a 15-minute moment. Some people like to sit in silence, like, like the traditional meditation, you sit, use your
Mhm.
back against the wall, because if you're hunched over, the chi doesn't flow up through your spine and you want it to reach to the head and
Mhm.
go around in nice circles, because that creates a nice flowing energy. Because if you're like this, then you're just stuck in the head. So if you see that, oh,
Yeah.
the energy's stuck. Oh, the neck is like cranked and everything's stuck here. That's actually a physical thing. Your energy's stuck here. You need to like open, relax the shoulders, take a deep breath in, take a deep breath out. A physical thing shifts the way that the mind starts to work as well. Or you take a nice walk, slow walk alone, let your
Mhm.
mind just wander and start to pay attention to your breath and your body. Feel the sensations when a thought comes up and it realizes, wow, that thought made me so angry. And then it's like, well, how did my body feel? Well, I felt this tightness in my shoulders. Oh, yeah, I got to relax the shoulders because I need the breath to
Mhm.
come through. So now you're just adjusting the sensations that the thought brings. So now you're able to regulate better at the emotion and the physical now as you create this new energy flowing of breath and chi. So
Mhm. I
very
don't
good ways to help.
Yeah, I actually I'm also a yoga teacher. I stopped teaching well postpartum with Shazandra a little bit. It just didn't flow. But it's okay. I taught for probably almost 10 years before that. And I think I'm just big pieces in my life are shifting. So I'm no longer teaching yoga, but I loved it. I loved practicing and teaching. And then I also did some Vipassana pre-COVID, but did you go to the one outside of Toronto?
Yeah, and then the one that's like in
Dhamma
Barrie,
Tirana?
yeah, yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's the one that I went to as well. I did one in India, which was a little bit, it wasn't Vipassana, but very similar. And then yeah, then I was going to the one outside Toronto, but I haven't been there again since being pregnant or, really rooting into my family in different
Yeah.
ways. It's an invitation to bring those practices into my home and the home of my body too. And it's just different. Like I can't even imagine taking 10 days now by myself.
Honestly, same here.
It's so it's wonderful. And also like I can laugh because there was some freedom in that before. And there's some freedom also of like creating a really strong family unit. It's so beautiful and so empowering in just a totally different rhythm than that. But yeah, I was curious. Oh, there was a piece of, revisiting that even Vipassana when you go into that little room and it's all dark and you're sitting there with your thoughts. There is a beauty in creating that cave where the distractions are lessened, right? And that situation is quite extreme, but you even have like a totally well, I guess the float's very similar where your senses are just all coming down so that you can really come through in that experience. So I guess my question is, do you create, well, I guess there's yoga. Are you doing that at home? Or are you going to class? Or how do you create those containers for yourself? Or, maybe you don't really focus on the create like a container like that and you just kind of interweave it with anything that you do, or maybe it's both.
Yeah, it's a great question because it's like you said, you've done the Vipassana, so how I've looked at that is that I've trained myself. So I've trained myself in yoga, as you have. I've trained myself in meditation through Vipassana. And all these training mechanisms have now given me the tools to
Mhm.
apply that in my life anytime and anywhere. That's the key. So like it's about not having to like, oh, I need to get back to Vipassana. It's like, no, Vipassana's always in me because I've already trained myself to understand and connect to that part of a container where I need to go in deep and find that true voice and self where then I can bring out. So floating is another container to do that. And it's a little bit more of like a gentler container because you can like join in at any time. And it's not like a solid 10 days or like a whole, yoga training. But some people don't have the time, right? So they don't have the time to like have these dedicated chunks of their life to get into a container, but they can chip away at building containers. So building those chip aways, like I go have a float to find that containment, and then I take that moment and I can apply it to my life at home. So now you're at home and you realize that whole emotion thing is coming out, the physical tightness is coming out and that physical ailment's coming out. That container has an imprint on you, and you take a minute to take a breath to create the container around you as an energetic feeling, as if you've been in the container already. So now it's like drop the energy off, the heavy energy off my shoulders. I take a deep breath to inflate my lungs and to open up my body so that my mind can just give a second to calm down. And before I react, I have a moment to just close my eyes and contain. So, like, those are elements to help practically build your muscle of creating a container, because we built that through Vipassana. It's a very intense 10 days. You're like sitting there solid. You're not talking to anybody. You're not even supposed to look at people, You're just kind of like, I'm in my body, I'm in my mind, I'm like allowing this whole thing to go through. You can't write, you can't, really you just let anything out besides being inside of you. And so it's like a boot camp to get into. So like you've really kind of built that strong muscle. And especially if you've done it a few times, it's like I've done it like 2 or 3 times. And so you're just kind of like really honed in on it. And it's not like I'm being called back into it. It's just more about like, I've really understood what that meant, and I now need to apply those same tactics into the everyday. And naturally, it actually shifts you. We talk about how experiences already shift you. You already
Mhm.
have that in your repertoire of learning life, and so it's like, oh, I've learned this little piece. It's always now with me. So it's about continuing to build upon those little pieces that have given you a little bit more insight about a true self you want to represent.
Mhm. Mhm. Going back to shifting experiences like our births, um, I remember during my labor, just remembering like changing, changing, changing. This is all impermanent. Every moment, every wave, every sensation, every thought, because there were moments where I felt quite empowered, and then there were moments for sure in this labor with Shazanja where I was confused. I was wondering why it was taking so long. And but I knew, like, I just voiced them to my support system, and we just let them out, and we just moved through them. And yeah, I guess my question for you, having gone through that portal twice, what would you tell a woman, whether it's yourself going into that first labor or a woman who's pregnant right now going into her first birth in particular? Because I think it's a bigger shift. Yeah, what kind of guidance or perspective or wisdom would you share with her?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like one of those really cool personal journeys, right? So everybody's like in their own personal being of what they really want for their birth. But the one word that really
Mhm.
comes to me, and it came to me in my birth, was you got to surrender. Like you really have to surrender to the moment, and you have to give yourself the permission to
Mhm.
say, I'm going to let this unfold as it will. And
Mhm.
you will talk about your fears because the fears will come up. And you
Mhm.
will talk about your doubts because the doubts are going to come up. And
Mhm.
so you're going to go through all of the craziness that the mind is going to play tricks on you, because it does. Our minds are doing that all the time, like and it's not because it's malicious, it's because it's life. Life is picking up
Mhm.
all this information around us. Even when you're not paying attention, you're being fed something, as like just walking down the street, you're picking up everybody's energy, but it's not yours. But you're
Mhm.
starting to feel the sensations of like, especially living in a city, you're getting to see and feel all this tension, aggression. You're like, well, that's not mine. So you have to create
Mhm.
this, protective barrier, energetic barrier for yourself, because you realize I need to cleanse to know what's my energy. And with my first
Mhm.
birth, I was working at a pregnancy clinic. So I was hearing every pregnancy story that you could possibly imagine, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I was like, I don't know what to expect with my birth, like I'm terrified. I'm
Mhm.
terrified because this woman had like, terrible birth that she had to get a cesarean section in and it got infected. And this one had a stillborn at 38 weeks. And this one had, and I'm just like, my mind is like going nuts and
Mhm.
it wasn't cleansed. So I had to take a 2 month, like basically like I left 2 months before my due date,
Yeah.
just so that I can give myself an energetic cleansing, so that I can give myself the space to say, I want to be in my body, I want to listen to my thoughts, and I want to be able to say, I have the time and the awareness to just allow my experience to be as it is. I had
Mhm.
a mantra for myself, and my mantra was beautiful, boring, birth.
Boring. I love it.
I want boring. I don't want drama. I don't want
Yeah.
anything to be dramatic here.
Oh,
Like we
I
even
love
wrote it
that.
on a little board of like beautiful boring bird. That's all I want. And so it's
I
like it's just a reminder
love
myself
that.
to be like, I just like something to be like simple. I don't want to
Mhm.
even make myself feel complicated, you
Right.
know? So it's just
Mhm.
finding that for yourself. Find your mantra that makes you feel whole. Because mantras are powerful.
Mhm. It's so funny that you speak to that beautiful boring birth because when I look back now, I think of that birth as like the most beautiful, expansive moment and also just totally normal. Like I tell people it was incredibly spiritual and just kind of another day in the life. And it's that juxtaposition, that paradox of like the beautiful and the boring.
That's it.
And and it's so natural and that we have those two elements every single day, and kind of everything we do. And I think because birth is so removed that, oh, there's so much uncertainty and it's like people there's just so much unknown that we don't really know, I guess, until we experience it. And I guess it depends how you envision your birth and how you do end up birthing, and also how your birth does unfold. And those are all elements that can contribute to it. But I remember being like, this was extraordinary and also just, another day where it's just like baby was born. And then
Yeah.
it was very normal and it was cool to have both of those feelings.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think there's like a bad stigma on boring, but like, boring's
Yeah.
awesome. Like, boring is like a really great state to be in because you're literally not in a place where you're just like overworked or under like productive, you're just kind of like at a steady pace, like the simple balance of like, flowing. So, like,
Mhm.
the boringness is actually pretty cool if you look at it in that same way. Again, everybody takes things differently and takes connotations of words differently, right?
Mhm.
But you made a really interesting point about the birth just being like a normal thing. Like I think in our world, it's women have just been veered off from the natural intuition of birthing
Mhm.
because there's been so much influence in pop culture about birth being such a difficult situation that it has to be a
Mhm.
medical intervention, and it has to have all of these complications towards it, and it has maybe some people will have some issues to go along with it, but sometimes it's more about you having to be a lot more in tune with your body and trusting that that your body literally is designed for this. Like you're meant to birth. If you have a well-balanced lifestyle, meaning that, you're not excessive in your specific eatings and like habits that could lead to like unhealthy states of being and like, like you're pretty in tune with just like feeling out your body sensations and like very basic level, but you're afraid because pop culture has told you this is going to be like one of the worst experiences that you could possibly go through and you have to have some sort of intervention. We have to readjust the mind for that part for women, like really empowering women that this is something that you're meant to do And it's one of the most beautiful states that you can go through, you know? So I
Mhm.
feel that is a really big calling for me, especially going through my own birth and like having to work at a pregnancy clinic and listening to the styles of birth and women who feel like they got robbed from an experience because they knew
Mhm.
better, but they got scared. They got scared into believing that that was the better option for them, you know? And like there's
Mhm.
so many different stories that come to mind of women
Mhm.
who've just like opened up about that. And as you know, as a birth keeper, you're trying to hold that space so that you can give them the opportunity to be like, we all have these moments in our lives where we start to reflect, and then you can adjust your life after and
Mhm.
incorporate that reflection and apply it with a stronger feeling of, I now know.
Mhm. Yeah, well, Jeff and I, in Finding Polaris in specific, we're really realizing that the heart of Finding Polaris is around rite of passage work. And yes, we love teaching wilderness skills, and I love teaching about plants and friction fire and all that. But the heart, the essence of Finding Polaris is facilitating rite of passage that are nature based for people. And with birth, what comes up for me is that this is an incredible rite of passage for a woman. And it makes me sad when women don't get to experience that, and it then becomes a quite traumatic experience, rather than a rite of passage, which means it's going to be challenging,
Mhm.
edgy, like dark. You know, there might be darkness to it, and but that is the true growth, and we need to go into those places to almost up level ourselves, right? And I think of birth as that, whether it's your first or your second. I believe there's that with every single birth, but probably a little bit more potent with the first birth. But in terms of rites of passage, I'm like, you know, I've done a vision quest, I facilitated vision quest, and there's still nothing like birth. It's so raw.
Oh
It's
man, I
so
know.
raw.
Like I've done ayahuasca journeys, you know, I've done like, you know, DMT, 5-MeO, just like psychedelics to give myself the open-mindedness to see what's going on in the world. And then I went through birth. And I was like, nothing touches it.
I
Nothing touches
agree.
it.
Hmm.
It's like the most amazing journey that you can go through within yourself because everything comes up. Every moment of your doubt, your childhood, your like adulthood, you know, your like personal achievements and fears are all wound up in this feeling. And you're like in this place where, and on top of it, you can feel your baby. Like, let's not forget your baby's working with you on this. So
Hmm.
now you have your legitimate offspring communicating with you as you're doing something together. So it's not just you alone. You're now helping facilitate this new life into this world. And so you feel that like, oh my goodness, I'm literally birthing a part of myself out here and it's going to have its own energy and it has its own energy. So you have to work with that energy. And so it's a dual psychedelic experience because it's the baby's psychedelic experience. That baby just went through a whole world. It went from a
Hmm.
dark, cozy womb to the bright light of this world. And it's like, what am I in? It literally went through a portal. It literally has changed its reality around it, you know? You're
Hmm.
feeling that. You're feeling the
Hmm.
baby's psychedelic experience coming out and
Hmm.
into the world that we live in. So it's
Hmm.
beauty of just figuring out, oh my God, I'm in a new place. I have to use my lungs for the first time. I've never had to do that. I just learned
Yeah.
how to breathe, you know? So
Hmm.
it's such an all-encompassing experience of feeling like, whoa, transition is like on a tenfold here. So if
Hmm.
you can remind yourself that you and your baby are both entering this new place that's completely foreign, but you're giving into the trust of, you know, your own personal faith in yourself, your personal faith into God, you know, like whatever personal faith that you find that is your like strength and your pillar, you get
Hmm.
into that connection and you get into that place where you're like, okay, I surrendered into this. And
Hmm.
patience with yourself, you know, like everybody has different journeys. And so if
Hmm.
you think that it didn't go exactly the same way that you wanted to, it did, because it was supposed to go that way. And it's
Hmm.
that's just part of the journey. And that's beautiful. and honor it and honor yourself for going through all that. Even the
Mhm.
most challenging and dark times are the most important times of your life,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Sometimes it's just harder to have that perspective when you're in it, but if you can, and you know, like, okay, when you're met with those challenges, there's that's actually the growth right there. But it, you know, sometimes you feel it more once you've gone over that hump of
Mhm.
challenge. But yeah, I- I'm just looking at the time now, and I was wondering, yeah, I guess you've kind of put your practice on hold. Is that
Yeah,
right?
well, I'm on maternity leave now. So my little girl's 6 months, and I've been really enjoying having the beauty of being a mom and like having my full time to give to my two kids. So right now I'm on hold, and it's great because I'm learning so much more about like the other side of life, because it all kind of comes back into your own practice, like
Mhm.
learning about pediatrics is a really important thing. So it's exciting to kind of like give my time and focus to like using my kids as part of my own understanding of how to work with pediatrics and Chinese medicine. So
Mhm.
that's going to be a nice blossoming knowledge out of this whole journey. And
Mhm.
also, as we talked about, postpartum health, right? So helping women when I get back into my TCM practice, how to navigate the spiritual, emotional, and physical postpartum birth.
Mhm.
So yeah, I will keep you posted.
And where, in case people are interested, most of our listeners are from Canada and actually mostly from Ontario. So where is your TCM practice in Toronto?
Also, I currently practice like if I was to start practicing out of my home. So I practice out of my home, and previously, and I'm still checking in to see whether or not I go back. But I was working out of Toronto Yoga Mamas, which is
Okay.
the pregnancy and fertility clinic in the east side of Toronto, and they're a wonderful clinic because they're an interdisciplinary clinic that have TCMs, naturopaths, chiropractors, and it's all kind of geared towards women's health. Of course, men come. I've had a man come to help with his back pain, but it's all geared towards women's health and their journeys through pre, post, and everything in between in their health. Yeah.
And
So
if someone wanted to reach out directly to you, what do you want to drop an email or anything
yeah,
like
if somebody wants to reach out directly to me, you can even just put this in the notes. But my email is Dani, DANI Vieira Dutra, VIEIRADUTRA @gmail.com. So you can ask me questions. I'm happy to answer anything, yeah, related to health, related to just personal journeys or experiences. Yeah.
and just to recap that, so you do offer one-on-one TCM.
Yes. So at this moment, I'm offering more about consultations, but not like because my license is on hold for being on maternity leave. I can't offer you specific TCM diagnoses or like herbs or points. But on a personal level, to offer any type of conversation or some insights on like experiential ways of helping, navigating your health pre or postpartum, I'm happy to give you as much as I can as time and, and personal feelings on things.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much, Danielle.
Awesome.